Okay, and this is now part 2 of chapter 4, Physical Activity for Physical Literacy, Health, Fitness, and Athletic Performance. And we're going to be focusing on the principles of exercise. Essentially, we will be considering many of the thoughts and evidence-based considerations in developing one's own plan to improve or regain physical fitness. Now we're going to look at the basic principles of exercise, cardiorespiratory fitness, muscular strength and endurance, flexibility, mind-body approaches, body composition, to participate in any activity safely. So, let's get started for part 2. We're going to start with the principles of exercise, and we're going to go and look at some of the basic principles. And the first principle for exercise is what's known as the overload principle. The overload principle requires a person exercising to provide greater stress or demand on the body than is usually accustomed to handling. So it kind of makes sense, basically. If I'm used to living only my coffee mug, I don't have it right with me, but my coffee mug, as my only exercise, then overload principle would say I need to use something of greater weight than my coffee cup. To start progressive overloading, the gradual increases in physical challenges and providing the benefits of exercise without the risk of injury. Always, it's about gradual increments, whether it be strength building, endurance building, or flexibility. Do not try to do it all quickly or all at once. Break it into smaller pieces. There's an acronym, FITT. And really what that means is it's the 4 main principles, if you will, or dimensions of progressive overloading. Frequency, intensity, time in terms of duration, and type in terms of the specific activity. These are further explored in your text. Now, for the second term that we're going to use is what's known as the reverse principle. And I would imagine that if you've ever been involved in an exercise program and then stopped exercising and then got back at it sometime later, you'd understand this term, reverse principle. Basically, it just is that the body adapts to greater physical demands. It also adjusts to lower levels. Take too much time off, you can lose a significant amount of fitness that you had gained. Now, I experienced this just in the last couple of years. My goal was to regain my fitness from running and additional strength training. So, as some of you may know, as you get older, your fitness doesn't last as long when you stop, and it takes a lot longer to get it back. When you're young and you exercise a lot and then you stop in a couple of months and you come back, you snap back pretty well. And you can get to your former fitness level pretty quickly. But as you get older, that doesn't happen quite the same. And I've been running ever since I was about 14 or 15, pretty much most of my life. My road back was to start over with my training. As much as my fitness had diminished, going at things too fast is an injury waiting to happen. And this is similar to the reverse principle with the addition of age. Now we'll be exploring this influence of age in chapter 15. For me, it took about 8 months, I guess, to get enough of my fitness back that I started adding mileage. And today, 2023, I'm running about 70K a week. Now we've been considering under the overload principle, FITT, reverse principle, and lastly here, we'll touch on the recovery principle. The recovery principle is important to follow as the exercise plan. Our bodies can adapt to the load we're putting it on. However, the recovery principle reminds us that you got to give yourself an opportunity to, to get appropriate rest between exercising your muscles. You can train every day. However, if you do, design your activity sessions to alternate muscle groups that you're working on in different days. When you exercise your muscles, there are what is known as micro tears on your muscles, and these are part of the process of growing your muscles, the breakdown and rebuilding of muscle tissue. Rest is important. If you don't take days to rest, you're not giving your body an opportunity to do what it's supposed to do with the exercise that you've given it. Alternate days, and that will make a huge difference. So, how much exercise is enough? Well, if you're not active at all, any physical activity will produce some fitness benefits. Fitness and health experts agree that the more exercise is better, but don't expect to start exercising if you've never done it before, and don't expect immediate results. It's important to do small steps at first and work your way to more exercise and fitness. Be patient with yourself. I can remember many times starting running, only doing it too quickly, too soon, just to feel my legs seize up. So, a few days of going downstairs with stiff legs was a reminder. Be patient with your body, Steve. It reacts to the exercise. Your body will get used to doing something it hasn't done for a while. It just needs to be done slowly. It will be uncomfortable, but don't let that be the reason you don't carry on. This is what's supposed to happen. I hope this next point occurred to you. Should I check with my doctor before I get started with exercise? The simple answer is yes, you should. If that's the simple answer, and it's what I would recommend. If you want to be sure about whether or not you should begin a physical activity or exercise program. In addition, you might also want to complete the Canadian Society for Exercise Physiology's Get Active questionnaire. It's in your textbook, figure 4.3 in your text. So this questionnaire does give you a little heads up about how ready you are for physical activity and whether you should, in fact, go see a doctor right away to get some approvals on what you're doing. Okay, so if you're going to get started with a fitness regime and you have clearance from a doctor to do some improving, let's start with cardiorespiratory fitness. This really just refers to our heart and lungs and circulatory system to deliver oxygen to the muscles over a longer period of time. What might you do in terms of cardiorespiratory fitness? Well, a person with good cardiorespiratory endurance can engage in physical activity for a long time without becoming fatigued. And that's important, an important feature in terms of this sort of component. The exercise that improves cardiorespiratory endurance are referred to as aerobic exercises. They're called aerobic because your body uses much or slightly more oxygen than it takes in. You will know this experience if you were out and started to run. Your breathing goes from normal breathing pattern to a more forced breathing where you're taking in a lot more oxygen. That's because the cardiorespiratory element of building endurance is aerobic exercise. And this exchange of oxygen to build aerobic fitness is cardiorespiratory fitness. An alternative form of exercise for cardiorespiratory exercise is anaerobic exercise. This is the amount of oxygen taken by the body that cannot meet the demands of the activity. For example, if you run and run and run and run and run, whether you're in shape or not, you will get to a point where your body will just shut down because you're not getting enough oxygen. You've put yourself into what's known as oxygen debt, asking your body to operate anaerobically. Our body is not designed for that. It's designed to operate with oxygen. Oxygenated blood to flow through our body to keep you able to function. When you deplete your oxygen, you're operating anaerobically, and that's just not as good. So, how do I know if I'm working hard enough? Well, there are a number of different methods that we can do to determine effort. The first method is what's known as target heart rate. It's a standard method in order to be sure that you're working hard enough to condition your heart and lungs while not overdoing it. It's basically using your pulse or a heart rate monitor, and your resting heart rate is the pulsing of your heart when you're sitting or lying down on your back. This will give you your resting heart rate, RHR. And you need a resting heart rate in order to know how much effort is too much. Your target heart rate is a range between 55 to 90% of that maximum heart rate, which is going to get you the most benefit cardiorespiratorily in your training. So it's important to take a resting heart rate. If I get up out of bed and just go and get my Garmin, which I can check my heart rate on, I have a heart rate of 52 beats per minute. Then that is what means by when I'm running, I can keep track of my heart rate depending on how hard I want to work. I need to keep it at about 55% maximum and no more than 90%. If I'm doing it at 90%, I'm pretty much sprinting. Now, there is a formula for that you'll find in your textbook. It's similar to the one that I have up next to me here. If you don't exercise intensely enough to raise your heart rate, your heart and lungs won't benefit from the workout. If you push too hard at the exercise or to your near absolute maximum heart rate, you'll run the risk of placing too great a burden on your heart. Now, it's more than likely that you will stop before you ever get to that range because it'll be uncomfortable. For more people, exercising at the lower end of target heart rate range for a long time is more beneficial than exercising at the higher end of that range for shorter periods of time. Now, there's another method, and it's an alternative method for heart rate, and it's called the Karvonen method. Now, some fitness experts believe this method provides a more accurate heart rate for training. This method incorporates heart rate reserve, HRR, which is the difference between maximum heart rate and resting heart rate. Again, you'll find this in your textbook. The third option is what's known as rate of perceived exertion, RPE. The RPE is a self-assessment scale that rates symptoms of exertion, such as how breathless you are or how fatigued you are. Now, you can use this RPE scale to describe your sensation of effort while exercising, to gauge how hard you're working. Now, it's important to note that this is a very subjective assessment. Subjective meaning it's your own thoughts on your own experience. And that can be good, but it's not the same as empirical data. All right. Now that we have considered what fitness goals we have checked with the doctor, we have some way of judging our effort. Now we can start considering how to design an aerobic and it's our aerobic workout. And there are some general guidelines for designing an aerobic workout. First is you do a warm-up. Always warm up first. What you do is what has some variability. A warm-up prepares us for cardiorespiratory system for a workout. Speeds up the blood flow to our lungs, increases our temperature and elasticity of our muscles and connective tissues. You start by walking briskly for about 5 minutes, followed by a simple strength and balance and stretching exercises. As I was getting back to running, I started walking first. I started walking first for about 2 to 3 weeks. Then I started doing what I call a 5 and 1 run jog for 5 minutes and walk for 1 minute and repeat it. I work at lengthening the number of sets from 5 and 1. I end up doing 5 sets and then to 10 sets. All my fitness improvements, I move up from 10 and 1 eventually, and eventually I go to where I need no walking and it's more manageable. Therefore you warm up with some aerobic exercise. The key components are intensity and duration for about 150 minutes per week. Then cool down, a short walk, 5 to 10 minutes, and stretch to gently lower heart rate and cool down muscles. Personally, I end all my workouts with a short walk, just to sort of lower heart rate, relax my breathing, and to remind my muscles that we're done. The last thing with designing an aerobic workout is to consider what your long-term fitness plan is. You start to design with some sort of a goal and consider the steps needed to achieve the goal. One of the most common mistakes people make is to push too hard too fast. Instead, think of it as a beginning of a series of phases. There's the beginning of about 4 to 6 weeks to get yourself prepared. There's the progression, 16 to 20 weeks, and then there's the maintenance, and that's lifetime. Take your time, be patient with yourself, and be gentle with yourself. One of the most popular forms of exercise is walking. Walking may be the perfect exercise. It can even lower heart disease. Even though walking is popular in Canada, we have 4 seasons. Not everyone enjoys outdoor winters for exercise. Well, treadmills are a good alternative for outdoor walks. There are tons of YouTube channels of people running with a GoPro on their head, and you can watch what they see while you walk on a treadmill. It makes a little bit more interesting. Some studies suggest that walking 10,000 steps a day could be a beneficial way to lose weight and feel healthier. The pedometer, or one of the numerous activity trackers, your Fitbit, can be used to measure steps taken per day. There are all sorts of apps to track things like steps, distance, GPS. Remember, for the assignment, make sure you have some means for which you can track your own goals. It's more manageable and it meets the criteria for the assignment. Produce digital data that you can add to your assignment. Popular sites for activity tracking include Garmin, Strava, MyFitnessPal. There are a lot of them. Since you started walking first, perhaps you are aiming to get to jogging or running. The difference between jogging and running is really just speed. Jogging is slower. Running is generally a little faster. For example, when I'm jogging, I go on a long run, 20K, I'll do about 7 to 7.5 minutes per kilometer. If I'm running for fitness, wanting to do some training, I may be running at about 5:45, 5:30 per kilometer. Just to give you an idea, if your goal is to enhance aerobic fitness, long, slow distances in terms of running is best. It's not about how fast you go. As I said, for example, on my long runs, they're about 20K, and it's slow enough and steady that I'm able to talk for the whole 20 kilometers. So if I go run with somebody, I should be able to talk with them, not quite normally, but be able to carry on a conversation. That's how slow I'm running. And also my fitness level allows me to be a little bit quicker than maybe some, but that's what I'm getting at. If you're looking to train for a race, you may incorporate what is known as interval training, which is basically short but fast runs with brief jogs between and the intervals. This encourages your body to get used to or being able to handle faster speeds over a set or longer distance. When I was training for half marathons, my interval work was to run a 2K warm-up at half-kilometer race pace, then like a half a kilometer jog, followed by another couple of kilometers of a cool down. Certainly, if you're being sedentary, it's best to launch a walking program before attempting a jogging or a running program. I hope you know that by now, and I hope by now that sounds kind of obvious. So what other aerobic activities could you participate in? Well, some alternatives include aerobic dance classes, or fitness classes, cardio, kickboxing, exergaming, HIIT or high intensity interval training, spinning classes, step training, bench or aerobics, stair climbing, swimming. There's tons of things that one can do to boost aerobic activity. Anything that increases your heart rate is a good aerobic exercise. Next, let's look at the muscular strength and muscular endurance. Muscular strength and endurance workouts are important because they enable muscles to work much more efficiently and reliably. Conditioned muscles function more smoothly and contract more vigorously with less effort. Exercised muscle tissue becomes firmer and can withstand much more strain. This results of a toughening of the sheath that's protecting the muscle and developing more connective tissue within the muscle. Remember I mentioned about micro tears. That's what's occurring. As mentioned earlier in the video, the two dimensions of muscular fitness are strength and endurance. Prolonged exercise prepare muscles for sustained work by improving the circulation of blood in the tissues. There are a number of tiny vessels called capillaries, increased by about 50% during regular exercise of muscles. Existing capillaries open wider so that the total circulation increases by as much as, this is amazing, 400%, thus providing the muscles with much greater supply of nutrients. The best way to reduce your body fat is to add muscle strength exercises to your workout. Again, small, incremental changes. These are the kinds of changes that make the best impact. So while we look at muscles, we can also consider muscles at work in terms of what happens when we're working. The only way to develop muscles is through a principle called, and we did it at the very beginning of this chapter, overloading. We've touched on overloading with cardiorespiratory. As you train, you aim to increase the number of repetitions or the amount of resistance gradually. Work the muscles to temporary fatigued. You need to exercise differently for strength than for endurance. And that just sort of makes sense. Muscles do only two things: contract and relax. And this is based on the attachment points of bone, muscles, and tendons. Let's consider the contraction types. So there's the isometric exercises And these are the ones that you push or pull against an immovable object, with each muscle contraction being held for 5 to 8 seconds and being repeated 5 to 10 times per day. So, for example, an isometric would be as if you were pushing against a wall, or if you were pushing against something like a post, and you hold that push for 5 to 10 seconds and then release. An isotonic contraction, this involves dynamic muscle movements against constant resistance several times. Contracting the muscles constitutes constant concentric phase, and lowering the weight represents eccentric phase to the lift. Now the next one is not one you may be familiar with, but it's an isokinetic exercise. It's because it uses a special machine to provide resistance, overload the muscles throughout the entire motion. Now this equipment is most often found in a rehab service. You'll find most of the resources for isometric and isotonic exercises in your gyms. You should ask for assistance to make sure that you're using it effectively. You'll find it on sound that the gym is downstairs. All right, let's move to how do I design a strength and endurance workout? Well, workouts with the body's primary muscle groups. Let's go through them. The deltoids, shoulders, pectoral, chest, triceps and biceps, arms, quadriceps and hamstrings, front and back of thighs, gluteus maximus, our buttocks, trapezius and romanoids, our upper back, and the abdomen, stomach. So this considers and works the whole body and suggests where your targets should be. And as mentioned, you may need assistance of a trainer to offer you some insights and guidance. A weight training program is made up of both repetitions, also known as reps, and which is reps or the single performance of an exercise, such as a single rep. So if I pick up my coffee cup once, that's 1 rep. Sets are the number of repetitions doing the same movement. So you should be starting with low reps and low sets. I think I mentioned with the 5 and 1. 5 minutes is a rep, and 1 minute walk is a rep. The set of 5 and 1, that's 1. I do that 5 times, that's 5 sets. So you should be starting with low reps and low sets to begin. Then increase the reps before you start increasing the sets. Perhaps odd to say, however, during strength and endurance training, do your best to manage and control your breathing. Basically, inhale as you contract, pull weight or push weight. So basically inhale as you relax muscles, exhale when you contract. The gym or equipment is not necessary for muscle training. Body weight training is very good. Push-ups, squats, planks, sit-ups, calisthenics. An important area for our posture, stability, and balance, which is our core strength and conditioning. Core strength training refers to the support of our spine, keeps our bodies stable and balanced. The types of exercise programs such as yoga, Pilates, the use of exercise balls, BOSU balls or BOSU, balance boards, provide muscle strength and endurance workouts too. All right, how about flexibility? Well, unfortunately or fortunately, genetics, age, sex, body composition are all going to influence how flexible we're going to be. There are 3 ways that we can stretch: static stretching, PNF stretching, and ballistic stretching. We'll start with static stretching. Static stretching involves the gradual stretch, hold for short periods of time. So if you're doing a quad stretch, you would be basically standing up and holding your ankle and pulling it sort of towards your buttocks. You don't want to pull and strain too much, but you want it, that's the stretch that's stretching the front part of your thigh. And so when you hold it for a short period of time and then release, that is static stretching. Now, PNF stretching, it's also known as proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation. And this is your own body as a partner. This is where you use some pressure of your own body here. Or you use gravity, or you can use some weight. And it serves as an external force or resistance to help your joints move through their range of motion. And this can be done both passively and actively. Ballistic stretching. This stretching is characterized by rapid bouncing movements, such as a series of up and down bobs as you touch your toes or with your hands. Now, saying this and being aware of what ballistic stretching is, this isn't the type of stretching you should be beginning with. This is something you might do after you've got some good fitness under your belt, in particular, you have some good stretching background. Dynamic stretching, this one involves controlled movements that gradually increase your reach and speed of movement. Now, these are all different variations about flexibility, and all flexibility training ought to be done slowly and gradually. What are some of the benefits of flexibility? Well, probably most notable is the prevention of injuries. Flexibility training stretches muscles and increases the elasticity of joints. This is part of the reason that if you're going to put load on joints, stretching becomes very important. It also, one of the other benefits is the relief of muscle strain. Stretching helps relieve muscle tension and enables you to move more efficiently. It provides relaxation. The flexibility exercises are great stress relievers. And it also has a benefit to better athletic performance, as good flexibility allows for more efficient movement and exertion of more force through a greater range of motion. Flexibility is also great after, in terms of its benefit, as it relieves soreness after exercise. It may help people develop a delayed onset muscle soreness 1 or 2 days after you work out. Remember I mentioned about going downstairs and having your legs work really hard and really be sore? That's what that's about. You may find this if you have just started your first workout program. You may find that a day or two later you're feeling a little stiff. Stretching can help prevent that and improve posture. Stretching our chest, the muscles that can help you sit up straight. So if you're going to begin stretching and warming up, stretching is a specific activity and intended to elongate muscles and keep joints limber. The value of stretching varies with different activities. One of the best times to stretch is after aerobic exercise. Like for example, the stretching that I do is a little less at the beginning of the run, but more at the end of the run when my muscles are already lengthened and warmed and are ready to be stretched. Now, we come to mind-body approaches to fitness. And here we're going to be looking at a variety of different things, many of which you are already probably familiar with. Pilates, where this is often used by, I think it's dancers for deep body conditioning and the injury rehabilitation, as it improves flexibility, joint mobility, and strengthens the core by developing pelvic stability and abdominal control. So if you're getting involved in activities, and in particular running, getting good core development is important to keeping your hips stable over your knees and over your feet, so they aren't wobbling all over the place, making it difficult to be an efficient runner and risk injury. Tai Chi is a form of mind-body exercise where it gently works muscles. It focuses concentration and makes improvement in the flow of what is known as Qi, the vital life energy that sustains health. Tai Chi is described as a meditation in motion. Some of you may not be able to meditate as often as is associated with remaining still. Tai Chi might be the nice meditation that you can do, as it involves movement. Yoga consists of various breathing, stretching, and strengthening exercises that unite all aspects of the person. It can lead to improved flexibility, protection of joints, stronger and denser bones, enhanced circulation, lower levels of stress hormone cortisol, and improved balance. All of which are good for the general health and well-being of everybody. Another area that affects our flexibility that was mentioned earlier is body composition. When we look at body composition, what is being referred to is the amount of fat versus the amount of lean tissue in our body. The best way to maintain a healthy body composition is to combine regular physical activity with good nutrition, both of which we're going to cover in this class, and I hope that you'll take the advantage of this for your own benefit. This is something that's going to make a huge difference in all of our lives for life. We can always come up with reasons not to start or to carry on physical activities. Being able to get past the barriers of physical activity is critical to being able to start. Your textbook highlights just a few. You may be familiar with some of these. Sitting and more sitting is one. This is one of the one that many of us can identify with. College and university age students may be sitting as much as 14 hours a day. There have been attempts by research to investigate alternatives in education and workplaces. You may have seen these in some places. We did try it at Georgian for a while. Things like stationary bikes in classrooms. Students had reported that some positive effects for their education and personal lives by being on a treadmill while working on a computer. Another alternative was the use of standing desks. Some people feel, when will I find the time to exercise? Well, this was one of my dilemmas, and I needed to prioritize myself. So I committed to run at 5:30 in the morning. No other activity conflicts except with sleep. And I get the workout done early. I don't have to find time for it. It's been done. All right. Intrapersonal, interpersonal, and structural barriers. These represent, and it's based on research, 3 categories of barriers. Let's touch on each of them now. That's I-N-T-R-A, intrapersonal barriers. These sorts of barriers come from within us, or they don't, or don't think you can do it, do it well enough. Fear of failure, just not confident with physical fitness, ethnicity, and age can all be these intrapersonal barriers. The intrapersonal barriers, these are sourced outside of ourselves. Things like the lack of friends to join and support you, influence of friends and potential body image issues. And then there's structural barriers, and these can include the paid work that we do, academic responsibilities, scheduling our time and our day, money, transportation. These can all be very difficult. And lastly, our text introduces the third reason for barriers to physical activity. Cultural barriers can be a problem too. Canadian post-secondary education systems have been welcoming students from all over the world. Many students find the move from their home country to Canada or to a Canadian school to be quite a transition, as one would expect. If any domestic student from Canada were to go to another part of the world to get educated, they would find the same difficulties. This in part is a significant reason some students may find getting physically active too costly, given all the other expenses. Many continue to support their families back home and are particularly focused on academic success. Students from other countries, as well as Indigenous students, find racism and discrimination still exist when joining sports teams or participating in the gym. Whether perceived or real barriers to engage in physical activities need to have continued attention to support all in their fitness goals. Now, lastly in this chapter, and we're going to consider the safety and healthy workouts. So let's explore how can we prevent injuries. While some of the more acute, shorter-term, less severe injuries, sprains, bruises, pulled muscles, are a result of sudden trauma, oftentimes because we try to do too much too soon. Overuse injuries are a result of repetitive activities. To prevent injuries and other exercise-related problems, you use common sense to take appropriate precautions. So let's look at some of these precautions. And this is one I've been repeating, so I think you could probably say with me. Start slowly when you begin any new physical activity. It is the best strategy. Get instruction for exercise and use of equipment. Stretch. Get proper footwear. Keep any equipment you own in good working shape. Wear appropriate equipment for the activity. You wouldn't go skiing without skis. You don't go running without running shoes. And for the weather conditions. Say no to alcohol and drugs when participating in exercise. Now, one of the things some of us might be more susceptible to is overtraining. Overtraining or pushing ourselves to work too intensely, too frequently, causes about half of all people to drop out of exercise programs within 6 months. Signs of overtraining include persistent muscle soreness, frequent injuries, unintended weight loss, nervousness, and an inability to relax. So when you get a little injury, take care of the injury. Consider the following PRICE technique. P-R-I-C-E. P is protect the area with an elastic wrap, sling, splint, cane or crutches or air cast. P. R. Rest to promote tissue healing. I. Ice the area immediately, even if you're seeking medical help. C. Compress the area with an elastic bandage until swelling stops. And then E. Elevate the area above your heart, especially at night. Very useful for managing those kind of soft tissue injuries. Now, here we are in the winter, so be aware of the cold. Thinking about temperature prevention is the wisest approach. Heat-cold problems when you're exercising. Always wear as little as possible when exercising in hot weather, and drink plenty of fluids. Drinking fluids, if you're doing longer runs, or intense activities outdoor, that have electrolytes to replace the electrolytes you lose while sweating. Watch for early signs of heat problems in the cold. Watch for early signs of heat problems in the cold. Protect yourself from cold weather by covering up in layers. This way, when you start to get warm, you remove a layer. Because if you don't, you start to sweat, and sweat and cold is not a good combination. If you get too cold, add a layer. Careful not to overdress in cold weather. If you overheat in the cold, hot, sweaty, and cold weather can be quite a chill. Okay, I hope this has been helpful. This has been part 2 of fitness, and in particular, athletic fitness. Next week, we're going to explore Chapter 5, Personal Nutrition. So we'll see you next week. Bye now.